Yo, what's good, fellas? How we doing?
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe's not good. Oh, now he's doing good.
Oh, Joe.
I was trying to
Joe,
unmute
you
myself. I hit the wrong button. Not only was I muted, I shut off my camera in the process.
I was waiting for you to start off with a daylight saving dad joke.
Dude, I forgot that it was.
Don't encourage him, bro.
I mean, do you have one in the reservoir? Because I'll listen.
I forgot that it was daylight savings yesterday. I asked my wife earlier. We had to run to Walmart before we go on this trip tomorrow. And I was like, "Do you realize? Wait, was yesterday daylight savings? Because usually the clock on her in her car is off."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wait, your clock's right. So we must have changed. We must have lost an hour. No wonder I was so tired yesterday. You know what I'm saying?" So, but no, we've got this theme for tonight's show. By the way, welcome to FiveTwenty iXc for Monday, March 11th, 2024. We got this theme going about Christian manhood tonight, right? And it got me thinking, Katie, did I ever tell you about what my grandpa said to me before he kicked the bucket?
No, Eric. You never told me what he said before he kicked the bucket.
I don't know why you're laughing. This is very serious. Okay, so my grandpa he looked at me right dead in the eyes, Katie, like pierced into my soul, and he said, "Grandson," I said, "Yeah." He said, "Watch how far I can kick this bucket."
That is why Katie's response was so slow and delayed, because he knew there was a setup coming.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, dude, I'm excited to be here, man. I'm gonna be taking a week off next week, so I fully believe that you guys are gonna hold it down.
We'll try.
So
Never know what you're back to, bro.
Right, so,
be a whole new show when you come back.
Whatever y'all gotta do, you know.
We've taken over, found a new host, and everything.
Bars and Beats is gonna come on. He's gonna take over. Bars, you're coming next Monday, right? Set that time, baby.
The young man, Bars and Beats. We'd love
We're gonna start charging people, man, to show up on the show. Watch out.
Yeah, we're gonna have a Patreon next week. We're gonna have a number that says we're gonna have a Cash App for people to. We're gonna make them pay to ask questions.
Hey, but before we jump into this week's topics, man, I do want to make sure to let everyone know, go check out our Fresh Picks playlist on YouTube and YouTube Music. Man, we just updated it with a bunch of new music, y'all. I can't remember who all we put on there. I know we got new music from Griffin featuring Direct. Man, what else do we put? Oh, new Pro Size, new Spoken Worth. He was on here last week, so shout out to Spoken Worth. So make sure you go check it out, 520club.com/fresh picks, right there where our guy Big Swiss is pointing. I guess we should go around and introduce everybody that's hanging out with us here tonight, I suppose. Why don't we start off with my man, KD?
I'm not sure how I ended up first, but what's going on, everybody? Happy Monday, man. Just super long weekend, but excited to be able, man, to get with y'all tonight. Bars and Beats is going ham in the comments right now. Yeah, man, happy Monday and welcome to iXc, man. It's excited about tonight's conversation. Hit me up, Twitter, Instagram. Well, you can find me, yieldedmusic.com. Head to my website and you can connect with me there. Let's get it in.
What's up, everybody? Big Swiss. You can find me at Big Swiss CHH on Twitter, Instagram. That's it. I'm not messing with TikTok. I'm good. Man, I just got back from Nashville. I saw No Big Deal's Unplugged show this weekend, and it was amazing. And if you weren't there, you missed out. But it's going to be dropping the whole thing as an album, which is exciting. So you guys will still get to experience, at least audibly, what I got to experience. So excited to be back. Excited to be back on the show.
What's up? What's up? It's Joe Fay. Honored to be hanging out with all of you guys, and Optimus Prime over here as well.
Bro.
Yeah, that's a dope shout out.
Started talking. Yeah, so I'm gonna hang out with Optimus Prime and all the rest of you guys. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. And our guy, Mr. C, decided to join us as well. What up, C?
Yeah, what's up, man? Hey, 520 iXc family and audience. I'm just thankful to be here, Mr. C Live. You catch me on 520.com, 520 radio, you know what I'm saying? Sundays, 2 p.m., you know what I'm saying? 520 Collective Show with, Katie DeVessel. I love you. Eric Boston is Zero for Hire. Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Yo! But we here to talk about some things, and I'm ready to rock.
Man, Mr. C sounds like he's calling in from 1950 right now.
Hey, say what up to Doc Brown for us, man. Say what up.
Yeah, hey, say hi to Marty while you're out there.
Hello.
Bro, let's go.
Yeah, we love it, man. But let's get into it. Like I said, we're talking about Christian manhood, and we're going to start off with this article that comes from our guy, Big Swiss. He brought this to our attention. Opinion piece from James Lee, courtesy of Not the Bee, talks about America's war against Christian manhood and our call to fight back. So this is something that, as a squad, we've been talking about. And unfortunately, man, our guy, Zero for Hire, wasn't able to make it here tonight. But, I mean, I know he's been really passionate about this as well. And it's just the idea of how manhood and just the way we carry ourselves, conduct ourselves, has changed, especially in the recent past, right? Like there's been like this overhaul in the approach. And one thing that was interesting, we've got this, we got another article that we're going to look at as well tonight that both focus on this idea of manhood. I think they come from two different perspectives though on it, where this one's like, hey, how have we gotten to the point where we have, especially within the church, right? So James Lee, he kind of talks about, if you wanted to really kind of break down the idea of how a man within Christian culture, how you define what a man is and how we are to lead, right? And how we are to fulfill our role as we are designed to do. How would you really go in and cause a disruption in that, right? And I'm gonna pull this down a little bit here. He talks about, you can crush masculinity in a lot of ways. You start with, kind of like what obviously the things we've been seeing, right? Like society insisting that little boys act like little girls, right? And man, I want to be careful so that we don't get like dinged on anything here on how we say it, but
Hey.
there's I don't want to just sit here and read it word for word. I mean, y'all can definitely check it out. But he talks about how like the fathers are separated from the household, right? And like young boys never really following in those footsteps, learning from a male role model. And even within churches, they're not asking young boys, they're not asking anything of young boys and providing no stability of their identity. So where are they getting this idea from, right? And he sets up this whole example to ultimately say, hey, but guess what? Let me actually pull this down to right here. He sets up this whole example, says, doesn't sound familiar. It's actually what's happening in modern America, and it's hard to do it any better than what America has done. So let's start there, guys. Like, what's your thoughts on this? Obviously, I think we know the answer is that society has definitely taken this approach. I guess my biggest concern is, man, why has the church not stepped up? Why have we not done better? And instead, we've just kind of fallen in line with what's happening and going in right along with it.
Yeah, I mean, you could trace a lot of this back to the 80s and 90s and even further, but you look at the seeker-friendly church that kind of started we don't want to offend anyone. We want this to be an open church, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, because the gospel's for everybody. but it became to a point where it's like, we gotta not say, kind of like what you're saying is like, I don't want to say anything that's going to get us demonetized on YouTube. It's like pastors got into I don't want to say anything that's going to get my inbox filled up with this and have picket signs out my church. And I'm like, sometimes I'm mad we don't have picket signs out my church. Like, I remember a guy brought a picket sign to my church one day by himself, and I was like, tell me more about your sign. And he's like, I don't think you guys preach the gospel enough. And I'm like, okay, can you give me specific examples? He's like, no. And I'm like, then what are you doing here? Like, but regardless of that whole thing, it's like, I had a conversation with a friend not too long ago, who I hadn't seen in a while. We had like kind of like a little friend reunion in December. And she was talking about how her daughter is asking about like transgender stuff, and she's like 9, and just the struggles with that. And I was like, did you teach her that? And she was like, no. And I'm like, where did she learn it? And she was like, at her school. And she lives in California. This is like one of my best friend's older sister that I grew up with. And I'm like, you need to like teach a child in the way that they should go so that they will not depart from it when they become older. It's Proverbs 22:6. I think I've said that scripture almost every week on this channel, but we've lost that sort of idea of what it is to be a man, and the Bible is very clear on what manhood looks like. And it's not lumberjacks shooting up cows and whatever the media wants to tell you masculinity is. It's
hold on. What kind of lumberjacks are you hanging out with?
Oh, your lumberjacks don't do that?
Apparently not.
We shoot cows out here, baby. Where do you think you get all your steak from? This Texas lumberjack cattle company out here, dude. Cool. I just think like the general idea of what masculinity is just so, if I was the media, if I wanted to trick people, I would just show them over exaggerated versions of everything and then tell them that that's bad. And, I think that's what the article gets to, and then throw in the medication. This isn't even just a manhood problem. It's a problem with the girls too.
Man, like there's a lot to unpack with this, and I think it's a more far-reaching conversation and discussion than maybe, and I don't know, so I'm just saying this, there may be a lot of other platforms that haven't, because you will have non-Christian platforms address a conversation like this. But of course, if you're taking or leaving the biblical part of it out, then you're really defeating the purpose when you're trying to have a conversation about the sexes and how God created them, male and female. If you're going to leave the Bible part out, if you're going to leave God out of a conversation like that, then really you're going to kind of run around in circles. First and foremost, let's call it what it is: emasculation. And let's just not beat around the bush, right? There's a lot of different things. I think the author of this particular article, and I'll be honest, I did not read the entire thing, but in the beginning, the way that he paints this picture of what this experimental quote unquote society would look like in order to strip a child of what they were intended to be, is very distinct, very descriptive. I think he did a really good job of painting that picture. It's just really unfortunate that is our reality. Swiss, I think you asked a question about, maybe why the church hasn't stepped up and where that is, or maybe Eric, that was you, and kind of like your lead into this conversation.
I know you can't tell me and Swiss apart.
I'm just saying, though, bro, one of y'all got facial hair and the other one doesn't, but you look exactly alike otherwise.
Okay, man. Go fame.
I think social media is going to ding that comment. But anyway, bad joke.
but hey, this is very true because I mean, you're not going to change a generation of individuals that have already matured, right? I mean, there is one thing about being set in your ways, right? But what you do is exactly what he's talking about, and like what we've seen is you go after the young generations, you go after the next generation in order to make change. And oftentimes those are the that's the group that kind of gets overlooked, right? Like you hear it all the time about public schools, and people are taught to just, we trust schools, right? We trust schools to take care of our kids and to teach them what they need to learn.
Used to.
But man, there's stuff.
Well, and that was the strategy, though, Eric. That was the whole strategy: was infiltrate the institutions of Hollywood and academia. If you can infiltrate those two institutions, you have everyone's ear. That's why stuff like this trans ideology gets changed in the DSM-5 versus the DSM-4, where gender dysphoria was an actual mental condition, and all of a sudden it wasn't.
Yeah, because they would take you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and sit you down and say, "No, you think you're a little girl? Oh no, Bobby, you're actually a little boy, and I'm gonna need you to start acting like a little boy." And now there's legislation on the books where it tells psychiatrists that they can't have that type of interaction with children. So they've moved away from that type of stuff. Ultimately, at the core, we have to look at it, and we have to look at all of the other parts to disseminate. Because again, that question was still asked about the church. Unfortunately, we aren't as vigorous in our defense of something like this because we don't see it for what it is. But any attack on masculinity is an attack against God, because man was made in the image and likeness of God. Woman was made in the image and likeness of man. But any attack on masculinity is an attack on God. And so first and foremost, that is where we start. And so that's why I said these other platforms who discuss stuff like this, you leave God out of the equation and you really just kind of run around in circles because you're not pinpointing what it is. We talked about this when it came to parenting. Don't whoop your kids. Don't blah, blah, blah. The Bible tells you that discipline and structure are necessary for children to grow and become who they're supposed to. Swiss just made reference to the scripture, train up a child in the way that they should go. Like, these are things that are keys to successfully raising your children and making sure that they have a God identity and not one that society provides for them. But then even when you talk about that attack on kids early on, where they're teaching kids in kindergarten, it's cool to have two moms. It's cool to have two dads. One of your dads is going to be effeminate and he's going to act like a mother, but they both have the same body parts and the same organs. So really, they couldn't even make another one of you by themselves if they wanted to. Like, we forget all of that part. But beyond that, remember now, the cats who are coming up now and talking about all of a sudden, I want to play marriage. And I want to marry the guy, and the girls who are coming up and saying, I want to play marriage. I don't want to marry the girl. These ain't 20-year-olds.
That's why they're fighting
30,
for
40,
IVF.
50, 60-year-old individuals who all of a sudden now feel a liberty and a change to be like, well, you know what? I've done the other thing. Let me go ahead over here and see what's, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, so it's not just the kids. It is.
And that's what Bars was saying in the chat here. He talked about, he feels like we moved away from biblical masculinity before this newer generation, and that's true. It's been a process, right?
And a process.
Slow degradation.
Now, where we're at now is just so blatant, and to a point where
any I guess belief or ideology or even opinions have a foundation, right? And the one thing you hear today that starts the house that's being built that we're talking about is statements like, "Oh man, the Bible is antiquated." Once people start believing that, then what KD is talking about, and I'm not saying that Swiss didn't have good points. I'm driving something home here. What KD is talking about then becomes null and void in the minds and in the spirits of all the many vessels across the world. They can't get to where he's talking about, because the idea that Jesus is Lord, that God created man, and then woman was created from the man, the river man. All that goes away because the Bible is antiquated. And guess who believes that? Most of society in today's time believe that the Bible that we're talking about, the John 3:16, the Matthew 6:33, all that stuff goes out the window, because the devil don't have to tell you a big lie. Just like in the garden. Oh man, you're not gonna die. Don't worry, you can eat that fruit. All you gotta do is tell a little lie, quote unquote, and that results in the big lie and all the distortion blown out of proportion. It doesn't take much.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think what we're. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe. I'll follow.
I think a lot of this is anchored in the breakdown of the family unit in America. And when you grow up in a family, it is incredibly important that you have a fatherhood role and a motherhood role, because inside of the family unit, each one of those can provide a completely different set of traits that are developed within a child. So your mother is going to develop traits like gentleness and caring for others, and a more nurturing is a perfect word, nurturing attitude. And then your fathers are going to develop traits like courage and strength and ability.
Yeah.
So when you take either one of those, then what happens is you have a whole generation of these people who are developed in one side of the spectrum, but they're deficient in the other. So when you look at this generation, I mean, my goodness, if you spend any amount of time on the internet, you're surrounded by this world of people who are so overly sensitive about everything. And the reason for that is because many of these people, because you trace this back to the 1960s, we've been having an issue of fatherless homes for the last 60, 70, even more years. And so what happens in a fatherless home when you only have a mother is you develop traits like sensitivity, which is in and of itself not a negative trait. You have to have a certain level of sensitivity. But when you develop only sensitivity and there's no strength to accompany that, you have a whole generation of people on the internet who can no longer listen to logic or common sense because they're overly sensitive. Well, and so it's the same thing if you only have fathers. You develop a certain side of the spectrum, and then the other side is deficient. So a lot of this you trace back to the broken family unit and a system that at least back in the day, if it doesn't still today, incentivized single parent households.
I'm gonna cover the cancel culture argument here because someone's gonna say, well, single parents can't do both, and it's like, yes, they can. They're just not intended to. And that amount of stress and responsibility on a single parent was meant to be divided and shared and built in. And it's like, sure, I'm sure there are millions of single parents that are amazing out there. But imagine how much of a better parent they could have been if they didn't have all that weight and responsibility on them.
Yep.
That part we don't address. So that has to be a part of this conversation. Husbands can't do what wives do. Wives can't do what husbands do. But when we allow society to say that everybody should be equal pay for equal work, blah, 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 et cetera, and then we start to allow, because remember, as the church, we're supposed to spearhead, we're supposed to pioneer, we're supposed to forerun, we're supposed to set the example, we're supposed to legislate. So I think, Swiss, you made this comment when we were talking a couple of weeks ago. Things are supposed to legislate from the church down to society, instead of society filtering into the church, tainting the pool, everybody drinking the water, and then this is what we get as a result.
Yep, the church should not be downstream of culture.
Bro, when we start talking about everybody being equal now, and there is no distinction in roles, then again, it is an attack on what God originally created. Just because you can preach doesn't mean you should preach. Just because you can pastor and there's the absence of a man to take that place or fill, that doesn't mean that you should. But again, we have individuals now jumping into places that they're not wired to go, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, not wired to bear the weight or the load of the responsibility that comes with that office, that comes with that place. But when you tell me that a ministry filled with women who have a woman as a leader can do whatever it is. And again, this is not disparaging in any way, shape, form, or fashion to any women. There are amazing women in ministry, but at the end of the day, we have to remember the structure and the order that God set and established. Those things are there to protect us and to build us up. It's not to say that, just let's be honest, we weren't created equal. If we look at the way that God holds the man accountable in Scripture, if we look at the weight of responsibility, so now everybody wants to run around, you want to be the priest, you want to be the head, but what about your bad decision making now, and it's costing the household? and it's costing the family. There's no warning in scripture for women to make sure that they treat their husbands right so their prayers don't go hindered. But there's a warning in scripture for men, the husbands, you're supposed to treat your wives right so that it does not interfere with your prayer life.
And in Ephesians 4, yep.
Bro, because your prayers are going to govern your. So again, when we look at the level of responsibility that God requires for a husband versus that in which again is required, it's not the same. It's not the same. So when we say that these roles and we begin to move, we want that unisex church, like Swiss, you were talking about, like that seeker friendly thing. And the issue with that is that you go in intentionally saying that I'm not going to say things to be controversial. I'm not going to say things to hurt people's feelings. And after you walk on all these eggshells and you ain't made no omelets, you just made a mess, then the problem becomes you're perpetuating the same thing that you want to complain about. We have to get back to the way that God initially established things to be. There is safety there. There is protection there. There is provision there. And when we complain about where the kids are and the lack of structure and the lack of backbone, and Joe, you talked about how sensitive people are. I've seen guys who gossip like women. What does that lead to? Because you've been around a lot of conversations with a lot of women sharing a lot of different things back and forth between each other, and there's no understanding of discipline or when to pause or when not to say certain things. Again, it's not about being disparaging in regards to women, but it's about what it is that God expects and requires of men, and making sure that we're depositing that back into the system, the structure, the communities, the neighborhoods, and most importantly, the church.
Well, and that's what I was going to say was, like, what and you hit on this, Katie, what the enemy has done, right, is he's not said, oh, hey, you no longer have a role to fill. You still have a role. He's saying your role's different now, right? And what we're seeing is a generation of young people who internally can't figure out how to balance this because it doesn't feel right. There's something wrong. There's this cloud of confusion among youth, man. And when people are confused, they get upset. They respond in a variety of different ways, right? Because their mind is trying to make sense of something that's not working, that's not right, but they don't know how to actually address it. Right.
Well, you just said something important. The key word in the last few minutes is address. When I was, smaller, living in the South, and I'll preface it with this: a lot of people come against the network churches, whether it be Kojic, whether it be Free Will Baptist, but I'll say one thing, and I've even said it to my father, who's been also been my mentor and teaching me scripture and sitting down at the table with me at home. The network churches had the structure in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas that you guys are talking about. When kids had fathers' homes, the pastor corrected those children while he was around. Now, all the pastor does in certain churches, not all, in certain churches, is preach on Sunday morning and drive off in his Mercedes. No offense, but this is happening more and more now than ever. Forget about correcting a child. These pastors don't even stick around a few minutes and pour a little something into a child. Hey, I went to school for engineering. This is what you might want to consider when you go to college. Hey, my wife went to school for nursing before she got into ministry. This is what you might want to consider when you go to school. Hey, you know what? Send your boys down and let them do some work around the church, even if it's for an hour. Stuff like that. A lot of that stuff is absent in the church, and we want to know, and we want to wonder why our young men and women go out there and they're absolute duds. I coined that a church dud, where all the child does is go to church and sit down on Sunday morning. They don't do anything else but just go to church and sit down, and that's it. And I always had a declaration in my house that I always told my wife, I said, my son is not going to be a church dud. He's going to be well-rounded. And that's a lot of times also where the fathers come in. They have to speak the direction where the child is going to go, and then have a plan of execution, maybe a short-term plan. If you're teaching them basketball like me, I'm there side by side, showing my son what to do. And that's the importance of the man being there present, because the woman is doing a lot of different things. and thank God for that. But sometimes the father has to get side by side and get in the face of the of in this case in particular the son, and show him the way, whether it be a sport, whether it be a trade, whether it be a skill. And if that's not happening, then there's a disservice. And if you can't do it in the natural, there's no way that you're going to deposit anything in your son in the spirit. We're talking about the sons now. No, so I just digress from that.
Facts.
Yeah,
That's some bars right there,
man.
I think going back to what Bars and Beats said about the newer generation and starting before that, I think that's right. I think if we're going to hope to see change, the older generations have to start by looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves and saying, hey, how are we going to do something different to inspire these guys coming up behind us? And we're going to talk about that some more in just a minute when we go on to the next aspect of this. But before we do, man, I wanted to do just a quick little break here. I don't know if you guys saw this. Well, I mean, hopefully you did because I shared it in the chat. But this 96.5, it's 96.5.com put out this article of the top 10 Christian albums of all time. And I just want to talk about it briefly with y'all, man, because I found it very interesting because you can kind of see the graphic there on your screen. The one thing I noticed is pretty much
Lauren Daigle right in the middle.
And dude, like it's all it is. I asked myself, was there Christian music before the 90s? Because apparently not. The list starts.
I do see DC Talk at the top of the list, though. Come on.
Well, DC Talk, Jesus Freak. I don't know if this is exact. I don't know if this is ranked because they don't have the rankings, but it is first. It would make sense for that. I think there's a definite argument that is.
I mean, that was such a historical song. Like there should be no top 10 Christian music list of any kind without DC Talk in it.
That album sold so much, dude. Like, I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know at one point it had outsold Michael Jackson.
Wow,
that's great.
Really?
Not Thriller though.
Nah, not Thriller. That's
nothing's
But I mean, just think though, like what something like this spawned though. So like that's a that's a pretty big deal, man.
Yeah.
I like the Jars of Clay on there. I had that CD.
Yeah, so Let Down, that was a big one. I mean, that had TRL, MTV crossover. Jars of Clay, that thing was everywhere, man.
I had that CD.
Flood. It was so different from what we'd heard from Christian music, but I don't know, just to kind of hit on a few of these here. Delirious, King of Fools, another DC Talk Free at Last. So the Free at Last album. So DC Talk's on here twice, right? What else we got? We got Third Day's debut. Lauren Daigle from a few years back.
Hey, that For King Country, Burn the Ships. That record slaps.
The music video too. Like they are so cinematic with their music videos. It blows you.
Have you seen them live?
I have not. Oh my goodness.
It's a top 10 concert experience. Like, and I say that as someone who's been to like 300 concerts. Like,
yeah.
They play every instrument. It's wild.
That's incredible.
Rounding it out, Newsboys, Take Me to Your Leader from 1996, and then Reliant K, Anatomy of the Tongue in Cheek.
Never heard of that.
You never heard of Reliant K?
No, there's like 3 people on this list. I'm like, who?
Wow, dude, Reliant K was Goatee Records, punk pop. But dude, like for real though, my thing that threw me off was like, dude, where's anything before the 90s? Where's Carmen at? Where's Michael W. Smith?
Oh, that's a good question.
He's listed in the honorable mentions. He's in honorable mentions.
Because Carmen was everywhere. Like
Michael W. Smith, go down. He's like mentioned in the honorable mention thing there.
Oh yeah, he did. Okay. Hillsong United.
Man, we talking about all time, bro? Nah.
Hey, Hillsong United, the Empires album. That album's actually pretty dang good.
Well, this one was Zion, so I don't know about that. But.
Yeah, that one sucks. Zion's a terrible album. And also, Lauren Daigle never talks about the gospel outside. I
wouldn't put her on a top 10 list, bro. Yeah. All time, ain't no way.
But it's probably one of the highest selling Christian albums, though. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure.
It's a good record. album. I'll say it's a good album. Like it's a great listen, but
no
when
wine.
you're outside of the studio, I'm like, do you ever
Yeah,
talk about Jesus?
consider the audience. Oh, and then when you ask her about it, she like,
She dodges. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything to my audience. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So here's my question: if you guys could add one album to this list, what would it be?
Man, I'm gonna say honestly. Now this is just because I grew up on this, so this is definitely biased. But probably my favorite Christian album growing up was "I on It" by Toby Mac. That was my jam growing up. I would have to throw that on that list.
Man, like I don't understand, and I get it. I know this audience and whoever wrote this and whoever they wrote it for is very pointed. But like there's an entire spectrum of gospel music that's left out. Like A Pages of Life from Fred Hammond. Like that's something that would make an all-time list and something that should have made, from an impact standpoint, should have made an all-time list.
I'm not an expert on charting and all that, but I'm just talking about just pure production and vocals. Right now, and the album that comes to mind right now is "The Sound" by Mary Mary. That album is like, oh my God, pop, worship, like everything in between, like high level everything. That's the album that comes to mind right now. If I had to throw something in there.
I'm gonna go Kanye West. No, I'm just kidding.
Somehow mysteriously disconnects from the chat after that.
I'm the Christian rapper of all time.
Where did he go?
Honestly, I'm gonna go with a sleeper here. I don't know if everyone here has even heard this album. It's a new album. It came out in 2020. I think it's one of the perfect Christian albums ever made, and it's sad where this artist turned out. But Montel Fish, Camp Lukewarm with Lord's Child. That album,
that's a really good album.
Broke me. Like it broke my soul. And like I specifically remember like giving it a listen because it made David Livick's list that year. And I was like, who's Montel Fish? And, this is during the pandemic, and I take my dogs for a walk and give it a spin. And I'm listening to this song, Repentance, and the sun is setting, and I'm walking my dogs, and I just start crying on this walk. And I'm like, this album is just different. It just hits on a different level. It's one that I continuously return to. So I'd say that'd be a top 10 for me.
Man, I'm torn between. I mean, like I said, I feel like when you got an artist like Carmen, man, I feel like you got to put him on there somewhere. Like, dude, like he ran things for a long stretch.
I don't even know who you're talking about, Carmen.
You never heard of Carmen? Oh
the
wow!
only thing I know of Carmen is watching his boxing movie growing up. That's my experience of Carmen.
Like Addicted to Jesus.
Yeah, Carmen was everywhere.
Fourth, bro, like Carmen told stories and told biblical stories in music before it was cool to do it, like being dramatic. Thematic, like
is he this Johnny Cash looking guy?
Yes.
Okay.
And he did he dabbled in like every like genre of music you could probably imagine.
So he was rapping in his songs before it was okay to do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Carmen set a standard. So a lot of what's popular now was able to feed off of some of the risk that he took from the music that he put out.
If I was
and the way.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to quickly say just the way he delivered his message and his music. It was like he wasn't scared to be identified with the kingdom of God. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what was real telling about his style of music.
And he didn't charge to go to his concerts. He was like doing concerts in like big venues too. Like I mean, I remember seeing him at Missouri State at the basketball arena at Missouri State. And his shows were always free.
That's dope.
That's crazy.
But if I was gonna pick one just for like more selfish reasons, I would say POD's Fundamental Elements of the Southtown.
Okay, I'm a satellite guy. That was my
That's the easy go-to because
that was my wrestling warm up record. Like,
it's the one that really blew up, and took them everywhere. But man, Southtown, when you go back and listen to that, like their faith is just so prevalent on it. I don't know, man. That album holds a special place for me. So, but hey, everyone hanging out with us in the chat. One, let us know where you're hanging out with us from. Two, what's the one album you would add to a top 10 all-time Christian album list? Put it in the chat for us. Let us know. But we're gonna jump back into this topic of manhood, and we have an article here from Substack from Samuel D. James. It's called "Are Evangelicals Too Hard on Men?" So in this article, James talks about one of his friends who put I'm gonna pull it down here so you guys can see kind of the summary points. But he's talking about one of his friends that had a thread going on Twitter talking about the way that men are not necessarily reprimanded, but like just the like
held to a different standard.
Yeah, exactly. And so he broke it down into these 4 things to kind of summarize that thread. 1, evangelical theology uses its beliefs about gender roles to put men in a position where they receive blame not only for their own spiritual failures, but for the failures of those around them, especially women. 2, evangelicals have a saintly view of female nature that predisposes them to assume that in any given familial, ecclesiastical, or cultural crisis, the men must be corrected first and corrected most firmly. Number 3, because they grossly underestimate the moral agency and corruption of modern Western women, evangelicals have a difficult time helping contemporary men navigate the obstacles, many of which are highly gendered obstacles that exist between them and a faithful, fruitful life. And number 4, these dynamics are constantly reinforced within evangelical churches and institutions because pastors and leaders fear offending women. So before we dive into James' response to this, because he has 3 main points that he put out to kind of counter some of this, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, man. Because I mean, one, we're obviously walking a certain line because there's that word evangelical again, right? What
used as a pejorative?
Yeah. What jumped out to you guys?
Looking at that, the first thing that pops into my head, because this is talking specifically in the context of the church, the vast majority of churches, most of their leadership is going to be male. And when you're in a higher position of leadership, you're held to a higher standard, which means you're going to have a higher level of criticism. And whether or not you're criticized, like you have a responsibility to hold yourself to a higher standard because you're not just responsible for yourself, you're responsible for other people. So it's the same thing within the family. Like they talk about being criticized for the failures of those around them, especially women. So it doesn't give the context specifically, but if that's the context of a family, if your wife is failing within her role in any kind of way, you as the man, as the head of the household, are supposed to nurture her and you're supposed to support her. And so to a degree, there is a level of responsibility that comes with authority. Not, I guess you could argue innately being a man, you do have a certain level of responsibility, but even more so with having authority, you have a higher level of responsibility. So being criticized more for that, I think is just linked to the responsibility that comes with leadership. That's what I think, just seeing that off the cuff.
Well, even going back to what KD brought up earlier, the Ephesians 4 of like, the man's prayers are hindered if he does not meet with his wife in an understanding way. And if you can't model that in front of your children, they're going to grow up thinking it's okay to talk back to mom. It's okay to clap back. It's okay to just be disrespectful. And, I think that has a problem too. We are seeing greater degrees of women getting authority in churches. And so I think that's having a different impact on the way we maybe correct men in the church. But yeah, I think it goes back to it doesn't matter. We are called to a higher standard we are held to a higher standard because we are called to a higher standard.
Facts.
Well, and that was my thing with reading this. Was it? I don't know. It kind of comes off as a, oh well, we're just being too mean to men.
It's very whiny. Just it's a very whiny argument, which then reinforces the fact that hey, you still want to breastfeed or something, like you want to put you on the teat and wrap you, swaddle you in a blanket, and you know what I'm saying? Like there's a work to be done, and even to the points that you guys made, like to whom much is given, much is required. I don't understand. Now, don't get me wrong. As a leader, there's blame and some responsibility that you bear even between you and God for things maybe not necessarily being what they need to be. The best thing that anyone can do in whatever capacity that you serve in is control what you can control, which means I'm going to do what God has told me to do. If I have people over me, that's going to be to serve them. If I have people, peer level, that's going to be to work in conjunction. If I have folks under me, then that means that I'm going to lead them by example, and then I'm going to disseminate what God has given me to them the way God gave it to me to give to them. Because once I begin to alter certain things, ask Saul, then it becomes something entirely different. But I can bear blame if I don't do what I'm supposed to do at any one of those levels. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, at the end of the day, yeah, there's responsibility. Yes, there's accountability. But then you also look at the other aspect of that. And I think, Swiss, you may have brought this up in just in terms of some of those transferences of roles. And, again, we could discuss and talk about, whether they were intended or not. But one thing we know for sure, and one thing that's hard to get around, and one of the reasons why God set things up the way that he did is that, one group is more, one group is more apt to be led by their emotions and their feelings. So if I don't scrub certain things out of me legislating what God has told for me to do in that role of authority, I can't issue rebukes based on how I feel. I can't issue though. I can't operate and function based on emotion. And again, I'm just speaking that generally, not saying that anyone is. But when you talk about stuff like this, if you're saying that, oh, well, men are being chastised in the church and et cetera, then you got to look at that. But by the same token, if I don't open up the door and create the space by not being where I'm supposed to be and doing what I'm supposed to do, then part of this is a mute point in a conversation that doesn't have to happen because I'm fulfilling my role. But if I'm not fulfilling my role, then I create space for other things to happen that technically shouldn't happen.
Well, yeah, my wife and I serve in a premarital ministry. It's an 8-week ministry that serves seriously dating and engaged couples. And we go through this 8-week curriculum that teaches all the different aspects of your marriage. And one of the weeks we focus on roles and responsibilities. And I mean, without a miss, we always have a female in the group that takes issue with submission. And they don't understand that the man has a higher call of submission in that he is supposed to lay down his life for his bride the way Christ laid down his life for his church. Going back to the prayers again, our prayers are hindered if we're not understanding our wife, which means that it's not a submission that we take, it's a submission that we earn as we follow the Lord, right? Like the liberal church will talk about the Trinity in the sense that God made Jesus and Jesus submits to the Father and the Spirit submits to Jesus. And it's like, no. The scripture does not point to that. Like they are equally in union in an eternal dance, gladly fulfilling each other's will at the same time. And so the roles that we have are to reflect the way that the community of the Trinity is. And so when we insert our own kind of idea of the negative side of submission, that's when the lies come in. And that's the, you know, to what you were saying, Mr. C, about, hey, it just takes a little, like, did he really mean that? Did he really say that? Do I really have to submit to him? And sure, there are plenty of men who have abused that role as a Christian, and they should be called out and they should repent. But it, like I said, it's something that the wife gives, not the husband takes.
Yeah, man.
I like that.
Well, so James here, he kind of responds, right? He's got 3 points that he makes. And, you know, he points out that this whole thing still doesn't really answer a question about evangelical churches and the way they treat men. So he's like, here's 3 observations that I found that maybe can help in that. And I wanted to, see what you guys think, because I think maybe he's heading in the right direction, but he's not fully there either. The first one being, men need more than tough love, and conservative churches often struggle at giving more than this. Agree or disagree?
Well, it depends. Is the ministry that you're a part of in truth? Because if it is, then it's not a boys' club. It's not a girls' club. It's not a social club. It is the house of God, and this is the body of Christ, and it's the bride of Christ. And so, even to that, and then to Switch's point about the submission, if I understand my role and I understand what's required of me and what's expected of me, and I understand that God and his love and his provision for that love and of that love and through that love does not ask me to do anything that he has not empowered me to be able to do, and is not asking me to do anything that is going to endanger me in any way, shape, form, or fashion, including my sensibilities, my identity, my ideology. God is not asking me to risk losing myself. God is telling me to, lay down your life and become who you're supposed to be. So I never have to worry about it. So if the ministry that I'm in, so I can trust the correction if I know that it's the heart of God in regards to where I am versus where I was created to be. So if the ministry that you're in is in truth, and it's not a boys' club, it's not a girls' club, it's not a social club, it's not a secret society, then you should be able to accept the correction, because you understand that God chastens those that he loves. If he doesn't chasten you, then you're a bastard.
I agree with the statement. I don't agree with how he got there. I think when I think tough love, I don't think there's enough discipleship in Christian circles, at least broadly speaking. It's usually like denoted to specialized ministries. Like there's a great one out here in Dallas called Better Man, which I would highly recommend someone finding a Better Man group if you can. But it's not being naturally taught from the stage. It's not being taught in men's groups. It's not being taught in women's groups. You have these Bible studies that go through the Bible and ask really good questions, but it doesn't teach you how to disciple somebody else to learn that and what it really means or the context. At least maybe not in all cases. I mean, certainly I've seen churches do this well, but what he's talking about here is keyword for ministry tends to be encouragement or friendship for women and accountability for men. It's like, well, yeah, what did God create Eve for? To be a helper.
Yeah.
What do helpers do? They encourage and come alongside and pick up the things that the man needs to be able to do the things that he needs to do. And my wife and I talk about this. Like, I remember when I was sick, we were talking about like 100% of our week needs to get done. And there may be a week when I was sick, I was like, hey, like, you're covering 90% of the things that need to get done this week. And I really appreciate you helping me get that done, because I physically am unable, because I'm on the toilet in the bed all week. But when I get back to it, I got to pick up those responsibilities and even that out, and even find ways to bless her as a result, so that she doesn't feel that those things go, unseen or unaccountable. So it is important to realize why women were created. And that doesn't mean women can't do other things, but that is the intention that God created them for.
And now that we all have that image of Swiss on the toilet, we're gonna move on to point number 2. Complimentary.
And in my experience, also, I don't hear a lot of examples of men in the church saying, "Well, I feel like people aren't encouraging me enough. I feel like people aren't, speaking uplifting things to me enough." And not to stereotype, but in general, within masculinity, you're not quite as dependent upon a regular system of encouragement or uplifting. It's important, but usually, like me as a man, like when I'm going about my life and I'm working and I'm doing these different things, I don't usually lean on that as much. Like I don't need as much of a system of encouragement. So I almost feel like it's a masculinity to a level, because us men are usually more focused on performance. And we want to achieve more. We want to accomplish more. And that's a God-given trait of masculinity. And encouragement is important for that. But really what's more important for that is accountability. So I think it goes kind of like what Big Swiss was saying. Accountability is more natural to, I think, the masculine roles. And then encouragement is more natural to the feminine roles.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I kind of
both need each. Yeah. But it's, yeah.
I think that's what I took away from it as I was reading this arc was like, okay, I think what we're seeing here is the result of this slide away from biblical masculinity that we've seen.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a result of that right here, where we're starting to feel like, oh, well, we need more encouragement. Well, do we though? I mean, I don't. I do want to make sure we hit on these last 2 points here because get you guys to weigh in on it. But complementarians can overestimate the degree to which happy wives and children reveal a man's spiritual well-being. Anyone have a thought to that statement?
There's some folks who are unhappy in great situations. There's some folks who are happy in bad situations because they've made a choice. I think we try to earmark standards of what success and estimation here should look like. And it's not carte blanche. You know what I'm saying? Like what these type of overarching themes and thought processes, what they leave out is the individual choice and the choices of the individual in them. So again, I could be covering somebody, but that person is still electing not to receive or accept all that comes along with that covering. Does that mean that I'm bad at my job as a husband? Not if the wife isn't accepting the coverage, because again, she thinks something other of it. Like Swiss mentioned, you get that one. It's like, man, I can do anything he can do. Anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can do better than you. It's that competition is when you're supposed to be covered. You know what I'm saying? So again, just because one person is happy, but the situation is bad, doesn't mean that there's success there for the situation. And just because a person is sad, but the situation is great, doesn't mean that there isn't spiritual well-being there. We have to make sure there's a nuance involved with this, and people make choices.
And I think this point right here was the one that resonated the most with me. Like, I knew a gentleman a handful of years back that, like, him and his family, they ran a ministry, right, locally. Wife supportive, kids supportive, and involved. Seemed like a great situation, right? And every time you saw him, he's happy, he's encouraging, all these things. And then they go on a trip, and while they're on this trip, this guy jumps off of a bridge, and you're like, what? Like, it doesn't even make sense. But of all the things that I feel like James said in this post, this was the one I was like, okay, I can get with you on this, man, because it's true, man. Like, we can't judge a person's current state by what we're just simply seeing, especially when it comes to judging it based on other individuals, even if it is his wife and kids, right? Yeah, man.
That's tough.
Dude, it's hard.
That is rough.
I'm gonna move
Well,
on.
another thing is, as husbands, are we affirming our wives in the things that they are doing so that they can be helpers and build us up? Like, full transparency, I have struggled in communication with my wife around her cooking for years. I am a very blunt. I will give you feedback you did not ask for. And my wife is not good at that. Like, she does not like it. She's like, my dad would just sit down and eat what was given to him and he wouldn't complain. And I'm like, I'm not complaining. I'm just giving you feedback. Like, I'm telling you what my palate is tasting because that's what I want you to know because you're good. But over the years, she's learned to take that not as a criticism, but as a literally just a objective feedback from me. But two, I think she's gotten so good at it that now I've like bought her a recipe book to write her own stuff in. I've got her an apron. I've been like really like telling her like when I'm at a restaurant, like, oh, I think you make this better. And like I've been blowing that up and like, and the like 2 weeks ago, I just told her, I was like, hey, she's been cooking a lot more lately. And I was like, hey, I really appreciate how you prepare meals so that I don't have to worry about it. I feel loved and I feel taken care of by you in that way. And I just want to let you know I appreciate it. And like, just that, like, is she gonna be like, I don't want to cook for you anymore after I say that? Heck no. And so it's just like affirming those things, I think also, defeats that contrarian view of like, yeah, you're supposed to be in the kitchen cooking, So
What's your address again, bro?
Come on upstairs. I got a room.
You sound like you need a flight. You need a flight, and you need a warm bed, like in another location. Hey.
Out here complaining about food and Joe living on candy, man. So,
but you guys are talking about something important because one of the most disheartening things I heard this way up here in the Northeast is that I met this guy. I was doing like a Black History Month thing out in Trenton, New Jersey years ago. And I just admired this guy. He was a pastor, afro, fur lapel, suit, tie, gator shoes. I mean, this guy was like dressed to kill. And it seemed like in the moment his spirit was right and everything. But fast forwarding, because he was a pastor at this church in deep South Jersey, close to the Philadelphia area. And then like an artist I was working with at the time, like he called me out of my wife out of nowhere. Did you hear about Pastor so and so? I don't want to say his name. And I'm like, no. He committed suicide. Man, that was so heartbreaking. And then like after the fact, like later on, it turned out that rumor has it. I'm not saying I can't prove it, but there was infidelity and there was all this stuff going on. So basically,
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I read about that.
Because of his image, he was just like, I'm out of here. I was like, oh wow, like, whew. So the discussion about men being accountable and feeling that heavy weight of doing what's right is a serious thing that at times maybe some women just don't get it.
But it's a role that we're called to, and that brings us to the third point here that James made. And I think this is the one that has the most crossover with our previous article. Joe, man, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But he says Christians need to recognize the ways in which modern society makes virtue harder for both men and women.
Well, I was reading through the text while you guys were talking, and I don't know what, because it particularly mentions red pill evangelicals on the right flank. So apparently this is targeted towards the conservative right. But it talks about the assumption is that women go bad because they want to. And I haven't heard anyone presenting some assumption that women go bad because they want to. So I don't know who that is direct. Who is that person?
It's the Andrew Tates that say that.
I guess so. Again,
which he's not a Christian, but
yeah, which is kind of funny because he mentions Andrew Tate. Yeah, and he's not even a Christian. So I guess you have a couple wild cards. You're always gonna have a couple wild cards that don't represent people like me. Like I've never once in my life said that women go bad because they want to. So that's an argument that this is an argument that kind of falls flat because it's hinging on the concept that women go bad because they want to, which I've never advocated that. So it says, let's see where it says that men go bad because they are pushed by cultural forces that act upon them in ways the church does not, which I believe is true. But I also believe that
That's true for
there are
women.
many cases of men going bad out of the evil of their own heart. So yeah, because they want to. So men go bad because they want to, and also because they're pushed by society. Women go bad because they want to, and because they're pushed by society. So I don't really get the point of this argument. It almost feels like it's meant to pit one group of people against another, which I'm not going to fall for that bait. So I think men and women are both equally responsible to walk according to the ways of God.
But I think that's the main topic here, or the main point of that number 3 is similar to what we were looking at in that first article, right? Like, how much does society attempt to impact the way that we behave?
Well, yeah, man, you can't go to a restaurant and see a parent with 2 or 3 kids at the table with 3 iPads watching Netflix, or.
And now I got my iPad, so I can join them.
You did. You can't go anywhere without seeing something targeted for ways for people to get distracted. You have this dink culture thing coming up where it's like, dual income, no kids, which my wife and I don't have any kids, but it's not for a lack of trying. But regardless, it's like, Seth Rogen came out and was like, oh, I love not having kids. I get to lay in bed and watch cartoons with my wife every Saturday and smoke weed. And it's like, what? Like, that sounds terrible.
Wow,
like,
great priorities.
Yeah. I'm like, so if you did have, and not only that, you have children that are watching you say that because you're a celebrity. And it's like, if you just keep pumping, my friend Paul, who does not watch the show but would love to come on the show. I bet he would have some really
tell
good
Paul
things.
To subscribe.
I should tell Paul to come in here. Paul would kill it. He had a tweet the other day about like how the modern church wonders why our kids steer toward the culture, but yet we'll send them to these public schools that will teach their kids stuff that is anti-God. They will put them on TV shows that teach anti-God, and it's like, and then we wonder why they walk away from the faith. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of true. You let the culture get to them.
Well, not only that, but they see us struggling with it, right?
No, it's not struggling. It's literally saying, here, this is, I approve of this thing as your parent. You should like this. I used to watch South Park with my mom at 13 years old. My mom thought that show was hilarious, so I thought it was hilarious. And to a degree, a lot of things they say are very funny and politically on point. But was it appropriate for me at that time for my mom to do that? Absolutely not. My dad was like, when you're ready to have sex, let me know. We'll go get you some condoms. Like, just like I had these super hippie liberal parents that just let me do whatever I wanted to do. And so it's no wonder why I was a wreck from my teenage years and got addicted to pornography at such a young age and let that influence my relationships and impact the way I think about sex and intimacy, which led into some problems in my marriage. Like, those things, it wasn't an accident. Like, it wasn't intended either. I don't think my parents were like, I hope to mess up Scott's view of intimacy. Like, that wasn't their intention, but that was the outfalling of them not training me in the way that I should go.
Well, I also think that, like, because you mentioned male sexuality, which I think is part of that conversation, because it talks about men being kind of, what the argument of the article was that the idea that men are more prone to attack from society, which I think part of that argument is based off of the sexuality of men, who are more easily, they're more easily tempted by, I think, sexuality across the internet than females are in general. So that part of the argument, I think maybe that's part of what they're referring to when they say that men are corrupted by society more than females are. So that statement is still a blanket statement that's not entirely true, but that might be part of what they were basing that statement off of.
Well, then get away from the stuff that's, if you're right eye offend, you plug it out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's better to enter into heaven with one eye than to go in, you know what I'm saying? Like, at what point? I don't Like so for individuals who have been called to a higher degree of responsibility and accountability, I don't like the fact that this article tries to make an excuse for us not being responsible and not
Yeah.
being accountable. What part do you play in your sanctification? What part do you play? Oh, my bad. We're talking about evangelicals. What are you blanketing here in regards to this? Are we talking about a powerless, impotent group of believers who have no ability to crucify their flesh, which is not something that scripture suggests that we do? It's something that it tells us we're supposed to do. Not just sometimes, not when it's inconvenient, not when it costs us, but every single. Paul, I die daily. While I preach to others, I
That's
bring
where I was
my
turning.
own body under subjection, lest while I preach to others, I myself become a castaway. At what point? This is the Apostle Paul. And again, we talked about this. 2 Corinthians, Paul talks about how I went up to the third heaven. Whether I was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. I had this experience, and I heard things that shouldn't even be mentioned to us in the natural body, things that we wouldn't even understand. This same man who said, because of all of this revelation that I received, I got also a thorn in the flesh, lest I be exalted because of the way that God is dealing with me. I was given also this thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan sent to buffet me, so that I wasn't filling myself more than I ought to. At what point now are we responsible for removing ourselves from conversations, situations that expose us to things that clearly, based on this article, we're not addressing and taking care of? We're hoping at some point that God comes out. I don't hear anybody in this article asking for deliverance. I don't hear anybody in this article asking to be healed from traumas that have created open doors. I don't hear anything in this article about closing doors that have been open. I don't hear anything in this article addressing curses on the bloodline and how to break them. So, like, again, if we're going to talk about this basic fundamental, oh, well, all have sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God, that have sinned is past tense. It doesn't say that all are sinning. So I don't understand how it is that, again, well, you guys want to hold men to a greater responsibility, and don't you understand how frail this is? Making an oxymoronic argument.
Well, it's because what we've been taught is to pass the buck.
So now, where does the buck stop? Where does the buck stop? Yes.
Well,
bro, nah,
I mean,
It says here in Romans 6:13, do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but presents yourself to God as those who have been brought from death to life, and your members to God as instruments for righteousness. For sin will have no dominion over you, since you are not under law, but under grace. Now, he is talking to Jews in the specific sense of like getting them away from the law, but also presenting your members to sin. Like, men will willingly walk into strip clubs, willingly go on into pornography, willingly do things.
have to do that, bro. How about stay off Instagram?
Yeah.
If you know that it's something that bothers you, and the search feed is going to pull up randomly something that's going to create it, stay off of it. If you can't be on Facebook,
well, and it's showing you that
off
because
of
it knows that you want to see it. So why does it know you want to see it?
Why does it know that you want to see it? Because when you scroll past a certain ad that has a butt naked chick on it, you don't keep scrolling. You slow scroll.
It's a 3-second. They actually have a 3-second algorithm. If you stay on something for 3 seconds, click it, it'll be put into your algorithm.
That. So that thing that you saying that your thumb just accidentally, oh my goodness, my scrolling, my screen stopped responding, and you just kind of got stuck. All of a sudden now, this thing starts to perpetuate, right? Based on it's the algorithm, but it's also the flesherism. You was like, I'm gonna be slow. Scroll so quick. Ooh. Okay, I'm gone. I saw what I wanted to see, and now all of a sudden you start seeing more of what you wanted to see. Like, again, at what point do we take responsibility?
Honestly, that's like a great analogy for real life too. The algorithm, how when you entertain something in the algorithm, it shows up more. Well, when you entertain something in your thought life, it only multiplies and grows.
Yep.
Oh, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the words of the great philosopher Dwayne Johnson that said, "Know your role and shut your mouth."
That's funny.
I'm just saying something to think about, man. There's some truth there. There's some truth there, of course.
Yeah, he had a couple other 4-letter words after that, but we're not going to quote that here.
You know, something about candy. I think that's up Joe's alley there. I don't know. But, if you smell stuff, go running. I don't know. But anyway, fellas, it's been fun, man. It's been fun. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? Again, I won't be here next week, which makes me sad, but got another commitment. I know you guys are gonna hold it down. Oh,
Wait, there's been a soundboard here this whole time?
I mean,
On KD's, yeah.
Yeah.
KD's got one.
Oh, I want a
Katie's still
soundboard.
taking the course, man. So he hasn't quite graduated yet. He doesn't have the certification. So it's just about what he learns from week to week. Okay?
Man, you gotta give us like a members like non-host soundboard, and the longer we're on the show, the more buttons we get as we like prove ourselves.
Let's get
Yeah, man. But hey, for those of you hanging out with us, or if you're watching this on the replay, one new episode of Dino Nuggets out now. So make sure you go check that out. You can see that on our Substack, FiveTwentyCollective.com/Substack. We also have a new episode of the 520 Collective Show podcast coming out on Friday. So we're tackling the foundational pillar of faith. So make sure you check that out. And you can get both of those delivered right to your inbox by becoming a email subscriber to our Substack. Again, 520collective.com/Substack for that. So yeah, man, it's been fun, dude. I'm glad we're able to tackle some of these topics that maybe don't get addressed often or enough. So glad to do that with you guys. I'm gonna run around the horn before we get out of here, man. Mr. C, any parting words?
Oh man, just stay encouraged, and I just pray that someone out there was blessed by all the exchanging of ideas, insight, and challenging words and perspectives.
Yeah, man. Swiss.
Mute. I'm on mute.
You
That
were.
was
Fine.
wasn't awkward.
I pretended I was deaf for a second.
Yeah, that was a fun convo tonight, guys. Loved it. I don't really have anything to sign out on. Got a new episode of The Process dropping this week. I interviewed Jared Sanders. Excellent interview. We talked about his new album, Talk to Me Nice. Look out for that by the end of the week.
Yeah, man. Right here on the 520 YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed. All that good stuff. Joe Fay.
Well, it's been great hanging out with you guys. I think what I gather out of this podcast is if God made you a man, just be a man. Wow. What great words of wisdom. But just surround yourself by masculine men. That's like one of the greatest things I've done in my personal life. Surround yourself with masculine men. And one of my life convictions is that you always want to make sure that when you're in a room of people, you're the worst person in the room, which sounds weird to say. But if you surround yourself with people who are better than you are and stronger than you are, you're going to naturally adjust to it, the average of the standard of all of those people in the room. So that's what I kind of got out of this. Surround yourself with people who are better than you, because if you just surround yourself with people who are not better than you, then you're not going to grow as an individual. So great being with you guys. Looking forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, man. I love how Joe big up himself there. He hit his own like button. He's like, man, what a statement. Right there.
Man, if you are a man, be a man. Wow. It's what a statement. It just blows me away.
I expect that on an upcoming video. If you can
I can find a way to squeeze it in there. I'll probably get a bunch of hateful comments for it. I got a whole bunch of people who dislike what I said in the last video, so I'm sure they'll find a way to hate me for saying that, but I'll find a way to say it.
But they'll come back, though. They'll keep coming back.
We love you, Joe. We love you.
See what else you say.
KD.
Man, I really enjoyed tonight's conversation. One thing that I'll go back to, and this is something while I was thinking about this that I think God started dealing with me in regards to, like, don't trick the people that trust you. And the reason that I say that is that we've been talking a lot about roles and men and women on tonight. Um, and I know it's been said before, laughingly and jokingly, but Eve was butt naked when she presented the fruit to Adam, and Adam, of course, trusted his rib. He trusted his rib. So I'm just simply saying, don't trick the people who trust you. If you're presenting something to someone is presenting something to you, they should be able to trust where it's coming from. We have a responsibility to feed into each other. I know Swiss talked about being affirming and encouraging. It's not about competing. It's about completing. It's about complementing. It's about two halves making a whole. The scripture says the husband leaves the parents and cleaves to the wife, and the two become one flesh. And it's about complementing so that we can go and grow to that next place in the Lord. So, like Joe said, if you're a man, be a man and understand your responsibility and bring to the table what you're supposed to bring to the table. If you're a woman, be a woman and understanding your responsibility. Too often, I think we don't appreciate the flaws as well as the strengths and the things that, like, we're created to be interdependent. We're created to be dependent on God. We're created to be relational. Like, we need these dynamics. God made us like this. But it's important that, again, like that philosopher you quoted, Eric, you know your role and, shut your mouth. So that's all I'm going to say. Don't trick the people that trust you. You know, build that trust and, trick the enemy. So that's it. That's all. Love y'all.
Yeah, man. And I don't have anything super insightful to say, but I do have a message for the person who stole my copy of Microsoft Office. I'm gonna find you. You have my word. So
That was very random, but we wish you the best in finding this
Wow.
person. It's like in Taken. I will find you. It's just minus the last part, but
Yep.
I don't know who you are,
hey,
but I will find you, and I will retrieve my copy.
just
You're
driving
gonna
it
put it
home.
in your you gonna put it in your CD-ROM and reinstall it.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. So we're taking it back to GeoCities. So here we go. And it's been fun. Y'all already know what to do. Make sure you check us out, 520collect.com/Substack to get tapped in with us. Let's go.